Shopify grows your business no matter how far or big you grow. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. Whether you're selling your fans' next favorite shirt or an exclusive piece of podcast merch, Shopify helps you sell everywhere. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S. Allbirds, Rothy's, Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across 175 countries. Plus, Shopify's award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way. Because businesses that grow, grow with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in.
Hi everyone, I'm Deb Flashenberg. Welcome to Yoga, Birth, Babies, a podcast produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. We will be diving into everything prenatal yoga, birth, and baby related, hoping to inspire, educate, and empower you through your journey into motherhood. Thank you for listening.
Hi, I'm Deb Flashenberg, and I'm your host of Yoga Birth Babies, and today we're talking about cholestasis of pregnancy. Now, you may be thinking, I've never heard of that. Do I even need to know what it is? Yes, you do. Now, it's not horribly uncommon. It actually happens in 1 to 2 in 1,000 pregnant folks. So it's not that out of the possibility of getting this. So I want you to know what it is, what are the symptoms, how does it get treated, how is it diagnosed, how does one deal with this through their pregnancy? Because you never know, maybe you're that 1 in 1,000 person and we really want you to know how to advocate for yourself and how to know how to handle this situation, this diagnosis. So to have this conversation, I have Donna Benavides. Let me tell you a little bit about her. She is a mother who has experienced cholestasis of pregnancy. She's now blessed with 2 healthy teens, Branden and Evan, and her angel baby, Jorden. And she has dedicated her time and advocacy to ICP, which is, let's see if I can say this correctly, Intrahepatic Cholestasis of Pregnancy. She is the founder of ICP Care, 501c3 nonprofit, and she is also a prenatal yoga teacher. Yay for prenatal yoga teachers. Donna has had this experience with all 3 of her pregnancies, and she shares her knowledge, how to advocate for yourself, and how to recognize cholestasis of pregnancy. So if you have it, you know to find the support, and you find that support to help you through your pregnancy to have a healthy baby. Now, Donna does share her story of her first birth with her baby, Jorden. So I'd like to give a trigger warning because the story does end in a stillbirth. If that is not something you're in the headspace to listen to, I absolutely recognize that, and I invite you to find out about cholestasis maybe in another way, or maybe fast forward through the beginning, maybe the first 10 minutes of our conversation, because Donna gives some wonderful information. But if this is not the place for you to listen to it, I absolutely understand. You can also look at our show notes just for the resources, if that's going to serve you better. So I'm excited for you to hear this conversation. Donna is so open and so vulnerable and so giving with her information, and I'm excited for you to get that. Now, before we get to Donna's story, I'm always up for giving you a little Prenatal Yoga Center update. We are well into the summer. Things are plowing forward. I can't believe I'm already thinking about the fall and our fall classes. Our teacher training for the early fall for September, October is actually almost full, which is absolutely thrilling. So we do our teacher trainings 3 times a year online and 1 time in a year in person. And what's been so incredibly rewarding is that ever since we've been doing it online, I have to count up exactly how many, but we've done at least 12 different countries, have people tune in from 12 different countries. We had someone from Australia joining, which is pretty remarkable. And then once a year, we do our online postnatal training. Our classes, even throughout the summer, are going strong. We've got our workshops. We have some new workshops coming in the fall. Keep an eye out on that. We've got our classes still going. So while we're a little tamer, a little little calmer. We're still going strong, which is super exciting. What else do I want to share? I think that's kind of it. As always, I like to take a moment to thank you, the listener, our community, for tuning in and listening to the podcast. I always like to invite you to share if you have topics I haven't covered or guests you think would be good. Anytime you have an idea, feel free to reach me at deb@prenatalyogacenter.com. And if you're a speaker and you think you have something that would be valuable to our community, you can fill out the application to be on the podcast at prenatalYogaCenter.com. And I have a big ask of you. Please leave a rating and review for the podcast so that we can continue to build our community and people can find us. That's it. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, please enjoy my conversation with Donna. Hi, Donna. How are you?
Hi, Deb. I'm doing great. I'm so happy to be here to be able to spread and share some awareness of cholestasis of pregnancy with your audience.
Oh, I'm really excited. So I think a lot of people don't know about cholestasis. So I want to dive into that. But I guess before we get into kind of the nitty gritty, the details, the symptoms, all that, I would love to hear a little bit about you. And if you wouldn't mind sharing your story and your own experience with cholestasis during pregnancy.
Yeah, so my cholestasis of pregnancy my journey started back in 2002. I was pregnant with my first son, Jorden, and I had a really wonderful pregnancy. And at 33 weeks of pregnancy, I began with an itching symptom, and pregnancy itch is fairly normal. And I honestly was always a healthy person, and when I started to itch, I was just like, oh, well, this is kind of unusual because it was not like a mosquito bite. It felt like it started with my hands and feet, and then it kind of spread all over my body. And when I went to my appointment to see my doctor, I brought this up and I said, this is just an itch it's bothering me. And she had suggested I try hydrocortisone cream, and I did try that, and it did not work at all. I continued to itch, and I honestly was thinking, do I have bed bugs? Am I using some detergent? Am I using some product on my body that's just causing this this itch that's kind of intense all over my body and getting worse? And it really would pronounce more at night, honestly, and it wasn't something that was all day long, but it was mainly show up at night. And then when I went to my next appointment, I spoke to the other doctor, because it was a group of 4 OBGYNs, and she suggested that I get a blood test. So that's exactly what was done. She had suspected cholestasis of pregnancy. And again, doctors don't want to scare you, and I get it. So she kind of said it in a roundabout way. And then I got the blood test on that day, and I was 35 weeks pregnant. And then when I went in for my 36-week appointment, she diagnosed me with cholestasis of pregnancy indeed. Now, this was 21 years ago this June, which means a lot was not known in regards to the amount of knowledge of what certain doctors or the management that kind of was consistently done. And what was decided is that I was going to get induced at 38 weeks, and I was diagnosed at 36 weeks. I went in twice. Well, I want to say once a week for a biophysical non-stress test. So, in other words, just to check the baby's movements and see how the baby's doing, and just with a non-stress test, which is pretty much at the moment of when you're on the actual testing. He was fine. And then at 37 weeks and 4 days, I went in for my non-stress test again. So that means that I had gotten 2 non-stress tests. This is my second one. He was fine. Everything was good. And then I went about my day. I was working. And that evening when I was home after work, I woke up in the middle of the night. Felt him moving a little bit more than usual. And honestly, being a first time mom, I honestly probably knew that less movements was a concern, but not necessarily more movements.
Mm-hmm.
And so much has changed these days with, counting kicks and all that. And so that was honestly a red flag, which for me, I didn't realize at that moment. But he was moving quite a bit more. And, I was just talking to him and trying to, console him as best I could, as a mom could with the baby, in the belly. And I was like, I know you're uncomfortable and I'm sorry. And he was, he was fine as far as I was aware. My intuition was just, telling me that something is wrong, but then I'm talking myself into being positive and being like, okay, that everything's going to be okay. And so I had a little snack. I probably had crackers and cheese or something and maybe nuts. And then I went to sleep. And then in the morning, I woke up to go to work. And, I went about my morning doing what I had to do, getting ready for work. And then I ended up leaving to work. And then I said to myself, I haven't felt him move. And I got really concerned. I was already driving to work and I was in the parking lot. I went out to the office. I spoke to some coworkers and they said, and I told them my concern. They're like, you should go to the hospital. And then I called the doctors, and then and then they said for me to go in. So I went in, and my husband was at work, and I called him and I said I'm going to go to get checked. I'm concerned that I haven't felt him move. And then he was going to meet me there. I went in. They checked the nurses. They checked me with the little Doppler, and they couldn't find a heartbeat. They tried, and then they called the doctor, and so the doctor came in to just check the heartbeat with the Doppler, but you know, she was having difficulty. So she said, okay, well, let's just take you right across to the room next door. There's an ultrasound machine. And so I laid on the bed and she did the ultrasound. And as she went about trying to find my son Jordan's heartbeat, but she couldn't. And the worst words that any mother could ever hear in their life is, I'm sorry, there's no heartbeat. So my son passed away, and um, I let out a heart wrenching cry. And at that point on, I was in a state of shock, complete shock. I was in survival mode. Um, it was something that no mother should ever have to experience, and I did. Um, I It was so difficult, so very hard, but I knew that that God was going to get me through this. And I did have my son. He was born. He was beautiful. Had little hair, fair skin, beautiful lips, um, and he was 8 pounds. He was
He's a
a
big
big
boy.
boy. He was a big boy. Yeah, he was beautiful, and he is beautiful. So after he was born, and I went to high risk pregnancy doctors after that to kind of find out more and dig in more about cholestasis of pregnancy, learn more. Knowledge is power. Um, 6 months later, I was thankfully was pregnant with my son Branden, and sure enough, I had cholestasis of pregnancy with him as well. It was quite different. I was being seen by maternal fetal medicine specialists. I was diagnosed earlier because I already know kind of what to expect, because there's a higher prevalence of recurrence with subsequent pregnancies with cholestasis. And so my treatment was different too. I was prescribed medicine, ursodeoxycholic acid, which is a medicine to help manage, and there's no cure for this pregnancy liver disease. However, it is, it's something that can help manage. And I did take the medicine, and I also was induced early, because induction is another important treatment based on your bile acid levels. So my son was born at 35 weeks and 5 days. And one of the reasons it was a little bit sooner instead of 36 weeks is because we also had a hurricane coming in from South Florida, because I live in Florida. Hurricane Francis was here. So she kind of like helped that along. And so after he was born, I had a surprise pregnancy with my beautiful youngest son, Evan, and I indeed had cholestasis with him as well. And I honestly thought that it was going to skip my pregnancy only because I didn't present with itching until like 36 weeks. Excuse me, 33 weeks of pregnancy, which threw me off because with was it 33 weeks or 35? I'm trying to remember. It's been so many years. Anyway, it was quite farther, with weeks in the third trimester. And I was just like, oh, maybe I'm not going to get it. But what actually happened with his pregnancy, which is something that can happen, is preterm labor. So at 30 weeks and at 31 weeks, I went into preterm labor with him and actually had to go on 2 different occasions to the hospital so they can stop the labor to, keep him in so he can cook a little longer. But yeah, I mean, he was born at 36 weeks. He was again healthy. My boys are healthy and they're they're thriving teenagers now, and I'm so very grateful and happy. And with everything that I did go through, I always knew, and I always did after losing Jorden, is help other women with sharing my story, and also being of service in any way I could, with answering questions, with talking to them on the telephone, and then hence becoming the founder of ICP Care, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And this year we're actually celebrating our 10th year as a 501c3 nonprofit. And we are dedicated to helping families and women, and advocate for themselves, to really allow them to get the information and the resources that we do provide, that's evidence-based, that's on our website. And we have wonderful support groups and all that good stuff. So that's my journey so far in a nutshell.
Donna, wow, that is remarkable. And thank you for sharing that story, because I can imagine you've shared it many times. Just listening to it, I could feel the vulnerability and the freshness of it. And I appreciate you, sharing that. And I know that you're doing this for kind of the greater good of helping others understand it. So I guess so my understanding is cholestasis is a disease of the liver. Is there more to it? How would you describe it?
Yeah. So just in a very basic understanding of it, it is a liver pregnancy induced disease. It it The main symptom is itching, and the worst risk is stillbirth. And again, there's other risks. However, it is something that is genetic. But there are also, we can talk a little bit more about just what other causes could kind of, what makes you a risk to kind of being more susceptible to having cholestasis of pregnancy. But in a gist, it is genetic, and because you're pregnant and the hormone levels increase, is where it's it it, it ends up showing up, or rearing its ugly head, as they say.
So you talked about the itching, and that's actually one that I had known because one of my former prenatal teachers had it. And this was, let me see, like 13 or 14 years ago that she had it. And I don't know if I had heard of it that much before then. And she talked about the same thing, like this itchiness on her hands. I think she said itchiness on her belly too.
Mhm.
Besides the itchiness, are there other symptoms that someone should be looking out for?
Yes. So other symptoms that may present, and again, it's honestly, it's just literature, just how it's diagnosed. It's based off of the itching is really like the number one symptom that
Is it like a
doctors.
rash itchy? Like, do you see the
No,
no.
no, it's not a rash. But for example, if a mom will itch, they honestly could scratch themselves to make themselves kind of create
Oh,
a rash or bleed sometimes.
oh geez.
But it's not all the moms. Does that make, like, for
Yeah.
example, I had really severe cholestasis of pregnancy, and I was itching and felt so itchy at mostly at night, and I would scratch myself. However, I never scratched myself to make myself bleed, like I've heard of other moms in our community
Oh,
share. Does that make
wow.
sense? So it
Yeah.
really varies, and in my mind, I'm always thinking, okay, well, I have a high itch tolerance. If I like people have high pain tolerances. But so other symptoms that may present are right upper quadrant pain. So where the liver and the gallbladder are. And it could kind of radiate to the back of the body where obviously, the liver also rests. It's in the front and the back. And dark urine anywhere from up into like an apple juice color,
Oh, wow.
pale stool, and also some very, very, and again, the percent is quite low, but jaundice is another yellowing of the skin could happen. But again, that's very rare in as a symptom. But yeah, so the itching is definitely something that is like the number one symptom, and it could, start in the hands and feet. It can progressively spread throughout the body, and again, the itching can be anywhere from moderate to intense, and then at nighttime is when it really flares up, when or where it's really bothersome and more noticeable.
Are you feeling like care providers have this more on their radar than they did in the past? You feel like, I know your nonprofit is definitely trying to spread the word, but when this happened almost 22 years ago with you with Jorden, did you feel like it wasn't as researched or as understood?
Yeah, I think that awareness has really helped in so many ways. And, social media has really allowed that to spread, because you share your story on your page or on your feed, and then other people, and then it just spreads like wildfire, which in a good way. But as far as our organization helping in regards to that, it's been amazing, but also just everyone who has been diagnosed with sharing their story has also helped. And as well as, having the organization go to conferences and spreading, you know, awareness in that regards to healthcare professionals, having a presence and being there. And then also, it is under researched. There there is research out there, and 21 years ago there was there was research, but it was older, based on older
Hmm.
studies. Things change, and awareness and spreading the word truly has made a difference in allowing also just moms that are itching, saying, hey, maybe it's this, and let me talk to my doctor, instead of just kind of like not mentioning anything, because sometimes you think, oh, I'm itching in pregnancy, it's fairly normal, I'm not going to mention it to my doctor. But if you don't talk to your doctor about it, they're not going to know, and then they're not going to say, hey, maybe it's this. Or unless you do the research on online. Now we have this beautiful wide world, information on the web, on the wide world web, is for us to be able to just access the internet. So having that as a resource is great, because then you can be like, oh, okay, well, maybe I do have this, and then
Yeah, and
let me
advocating, be like, okay,
yeah,
instead of just being itchy, all right, I'm
yes,
itchy, so I'd like to do this test. Or I want to talk
yes,
about how it's
exactly.
diagnosed. Yeah, so let's take a super quick break. When we come back, let's talk about how it's diagnosed and then using this knowledge to encourage people to advocate for themselves. Oh, wait. Okay, we'll be right back.
You could be the key to helping change lives. Join a clinical trial with Nucleus Network in Minneapolis and be a part of groundbreaking research. Nucleus Network has been conducting clinical research studies for over 15 years. Right now, Nucleus Network is looking for people with moderate to severe kidney impairment to participate in their upcoming clinical studies. If eligible, your participation could help advance research of investigational medications that are being developed to treat a variety of medical conditions. Nucleus Network is offering compensation ranging from $2,000 to $7,000 for study participation time. If you or someone you know has kidney disease, check your eligibility for Nucleus Network's upcoming studies now at nucleusnetwork.com. Your participation matters. Learn more about Nucleus at nucleusnetwork.com. Again, nucleusnetwork.com.
So we are back. I love what you said about having this knowledge out there, because the more we're sharing this story, the more someone could say, okay, I know you're telling me I'm itchy, but I'd like to take another step and explore that, because it sounds like, and I'm sure your care provider didn't mean to be dismissive, because why would they think immediately, cholestasis?
Hmm.
But now someone could say, I know, and I always play like the over the top, like, oh, I'm probably, being over the top, but I'd like, X, Y, and Z. So how is it diagnosed?
Yeah, so cholestasis of pregnancy is diagnosed with a blood test, and it is called bile acid test. That is the test that is specific to this, and anything over 10 may indicate cholestasis of pregnancy. And also, if a negative result is received, it doesn't mean you don't have it, because what happens with of a lot of our community members have shared, they'll have a blood test done, a bile acid blood test done, and then, it's not elevated, but the symptoms continue. And sometimes they've had to take anywhere from 4 to 5 or even more blood tests
Oh, wow.
to be able to get, for it to show up in their blood diagnostically. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's just something that's really important to understand, because if you're continue to have symptoms of itching and your blood test is negative, you should
Keep
really
asking.
keep asking. You just get retested.
Is this a test that, say someone's listening to this and they're like, wow, I fit that. I'm having some pain around my liver. I'm having dark urine. I'm having
Hmm.
the itchy. And they present this to their care provider. Is it something that's easily, so it's a blood test, but is it something care providers have that they can test? Or is it like a special test they need to do?
Yeah, so this test is definitely a test that needs to be sent out. The major labs do test it, and sometimes it can take, depending on where you live in the United States or depending where you are in the world, it can take up to 2 to 5 days. And again, time is of the essence with this,
Yeah.
because of the risk and having to know what your numbers is to be able to really work with your healthcare provider to really make the decision of when to induce, which is part of the treatment, is really critical and vital. So so yeah, the blood test is something that it can't be really taken like in-house unless maybe you're in a hospital. Like, for example, if you live in New York and you're in Yale, like, Yale University has an in-house facility. They do their own testing, and it takes anywhere from 24 hours or less to get results back, which is amazing. And then I know certain countries, they have that capability. So we just kind of have to get on board here in the United States and some of the hospitals to be able to have that. And it's not something that's hard. It's just calibrating machines with and having a little kit there, which again,
They still need to have the kit there, because that could
yeah,
be, so that's where I guess the awareness and the advocacy of someone
yes,
saying like,
it's
I
so
really want to get
important.
this tested. Is there a time in pregnancy where someone's more likely to show up with this? It sounds like in your pregnancies, it was always that kind of mid to late third trimester.
Right, right. The prevalence is in the third trimester. However, we do see a lot in the second, and it does show up, and it can show up in the first trimester. So it's important to understand that if you're in the first trimester and you do itch, and if your doctor may say, "Oh, well, it can't be cholestasis because it's a third trimester disease or pregnancy," or it just really advocate for yourself, and know that it can indeed, and it can show up as early as your first trimester, and you just get a blood test, request a blood test, and you get diagnosed earlier.
So say someone gets diagnosed. And it sounds like one of the treatments would be to get baby out, but if someone's earlier in their pregnancy, that's not really an option. So,
Right.
what kind of treatment is there besides induction? Is there a treatment, and any tips for someone that might be experiencing this?
Yeah. So the treatment for cholestasis of pregnancy is it does include the medicine called ursodeoxycholic acid, or ursodiol here in the U.S., and also early induction. So the induction is definitely based on your bile acid level. So, for example, if your bile acids were let's say in the hundreds, So that's quite severe. It puts you in a severe category, which means that you should get it induced before or by 36 weeks, because the stillbirth risk is 3.44%. So in other words, it puts you in a higher category for stillbirth. And you want to make sure that just the treatment with the medicine. Okay, the medicine does help manage. I like to say it helps manage because there's no cure. So in other words, it could very well lower your bile acid levels. It does have its qualities to help protect the baby. But again, the stillbirth risk is always there. And just having the bile acid number known to be able to make an educated decision, the doctor with you and to when the baby needs to be induced.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And always knowing, one of my points is what I was trying to say is, is, if your bile acids were 100 in 100, right? The 100 range. And then let's say 4 weeks later or 3 weeks later, you have another blood test and you're taking the medicine, and then the your blood bile acid test now comes out to 20, okay, which is a less risk, right? You're always going to base your induction on the highest bile acid level throughout your pregnancy. So you're
So
always,
even if it dropped
yes,
in
you
the,
need to be
okay.
induced by 36 weeks. And that's
Wow.
really important to know.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some support groups or resources? Because I can imagine that this is not, well, actually, let me ask you, how prevalent is this? Because I'm guessing in my over 2 decades of being in this, and I'm just taking my own snapshot, I've run into it a small handful of times. So
Yes.
I'm guessing it's not super prevalent. So
Yes.
maybe those that have this, they want to be able to find support and, lean on people that understand.
Yes. So it is 1 in 2 and in 1,000 pregnancies. It's somewhat rare, but not as rare as we think.
Yeah.
A lot of times when you speak to somebody, they may not have ever heard of this, and that happens quite often. Even when we go to conferences, you'd be surprised with certain conferences and hearing our stories and such. But we do have an amazing support group on Facebook. It is a private group. It is open to anybody who needs support and have questions. With this, we feel very alone, having a somewhat rare liver disease and pregnancy and all that it comes with it. The stress and just the anxiety of that kind of shadow over your head of the stillbirth risk is
Mm-hmm.
really is quite impactful for your well-being, your mental well-being, and having a support group and having a community to help you and know that you're not alone. And we also have amazing trained support group team moderators to respond to questions and to point them to the resources, evidence-based resources and studies and journals to be able to help them advocate and share the information with their healthcare provider. And we do have the private support group. We have our after pregnancy group. We also have a complete Spanish website and also a Spanish support group. We have state, local groups, and also a group for loss. So any moms that have lost a baby to cholestasis of pregnancy, you have a place to also share and get support in that regards.
That's really, really important. I can imagine the overwhelm and the stress that comes along with this. We are going to take a break. And when we come back, I would love for you to share one final tip or piece of advice you'd like to offer new and expectant parents. And it can come from the role of one involved in cholestasis of pregnancy, but it can also come from your role as a parent. That's a lot of value too. All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. We are back. So I'm really curious what you're going to leave us with. What is one final tip or piece of advice you'd like to offer new and expectant parents?
So my advice is if you're itching during pregnancy, it may be cholestasis of pregnancy, it may not be, but just a simple blood test can be requested. And if symptoms persist, please, please, please continue to ask for a bile acid blood test to rule out cholestasis of pregnancy. So always remembering you know your body better than anyone else, and we must be advocates for our baby. Really leaning on your intuition as a mom. The parent is always there to be their guide, and that's something that's so important because you're a mom from the moment you know you're pregnant, and it's so important to be able to advocate for yourself and your baby from pregnancy, and always following your intuition, and is so very important.
Yes, I mean, that is something we talk about in the yoga mat all the time of learning how to listen so that you can trust your body and the instincts that we have as parents.
Exactly, yeah, because
Th-
I also mentioned that I'm a prenatal yoga teacher, and so we have that in common. And I completely can relate
Yeah.
to what talking to the students and saying, listening to your body and your baby, you know your body the best. I always love saying that in my classes.
Yeah, because it's absolutely true. Where can people find your work and the work that you do with your nonprofit ICP Care?
We are on icpcare.org, and we have a Facebook page. We have Facebook groups. We're on Instagram, Twitter. We have a wonderful YouTube channel that has stories and also information that is so very useful to connect. And yeah, those are our main social media networks. But yeah, we're kind of everywhere.
I'll make sure all of that's in our show notes. Donna, I have so enjoyed having a chance to connect with you, and I just appreciate your story because I think we need to get out there some of these things that people are experiencing that they need to speak up for, because if it's not necessarily well known, someone may not know what they're going through and know how to advocate for themselves. So thank you for your openness, your vulnerability, and your work with the nonprofit that you do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deb, for having me and for really allowing the awareness to be spread of cholestasis of pregnancy that is so vital and critical. And thank you for all the work that you're doing to really allow others to be able to share and to spread so much that needs to be known for expecting moms. You're doing such great work too. Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been an episode of Yoga Birth Babies, produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. You can catch us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Periscope. I'm Deb Flashenberg. Thanks for listening.